The courtroom in Jackson County, Ohio, was unusually full for a Wednesday morning. The usual quiet buzz of legal proceedings was replaced by whispers and sideways glances as the main doors opened and a small figure entered. A 10-year-old girl, pale and wide-eyed, walked nervously beside a large German shepherd. Her thin fingers clutched the dog's leash like it was the only thing keeping her upright. Judge Carlton, an older man with silver hair and a stern jawline, peered over his glasses as he noticed the dog immediately. "Is that a dog in my courtroom?" he asked, slightly annoyed. Lisa Morgan, the girl's foster mother, stood beside her and answered calmly, "Yes, Your Honor. His name is Max. He's an emotional support animal." The judge frowned but motioned toward the front. "Fine. Let's keep this moving." Emma didn't look at anyone. Her oversized sweater nearly swallowed her frame, and her eyes stayed locked on the floor. Max, on the other hand, walked confidently, gently guiding her forward. They took a seat at the petitioner's table. Lisa rested her hand lightly on Emma's back. No reaction. The court clerk called the case. In custody of Emma Grace Culler. On one side sat Lisa and her attorney. On the other was a woman in her late 40s, dressed in a conservative gray suit, Emma's aunt, apparently seeking full custody. The judge cleared his throat. "Let the record show that the minor child, Emma Culler, is present, accompanied by her current foster guardian, Lisa Morgan, and her legal representative. Also present is the biological aunt, Miss Deborah Keller, represented by counsel." The lawyers began with procedural remarks, but most eyes were on the girl and her dog. Emma didn't look up. She sat still, gripping Max's leash, her lips pressed in a straight line. Lisa's attorney spoke first. "Your Honor, we're here today because Lisa Morgan is filed for permanent guardianship of Emma. The child has made significant emotional progress in Lisa's care over the past year." The opposing attorney cut in. "Objection, Your Honor, there's been no official psychological evaluation submitted." Judge Carlton held up a hand. "We'll get to that. Right now, I'd like to hear from the social worker assigned to the Yale case." A tall woman in a navy blazer stepped up. "Your Honor, I've worked with Emma for 14 months. When she first arrived at Lisa's home, she was nonverbal, emotionally withdrawn, and resistant to touch or conversation. Today, while she still struggles with speaking to adults, she has made considerable progress, largely due to the presence of Max." The judge raised an eyebrow. "The dog?" "Yes, sir," the social worker replied. "Emma communicates through silent signals with Max. He alerts Lisa when Emma is panicking or needs help. It's how she's begun to rebuild trust." Carlton leaned back, folding his arms. "Interesting, but not evidence." Emma shifted in her seat. She moved her hand slightly along Max's fur. He immediately sat up straighter, pressing his body closer to her. It was subtle, so subtle that most people missed it. But Lisa noticed. The social worker noticed. And surprisingly, so did the judge. He narrowed his eyes. Did she just signal him? Lisa nodded. That's her way of saying she's scared, but trying to stay calm. The courtroom grew quiet. Max lay his head gently on Emma's lap. She relaxed slightly, her shoulders lowering just a bit. It was the first time she moved since entering. The judge studied Emma carefully. "Does she speak at all?" "Not usually to adults," Lisa said, gently, "but she'll whisper to Max. Sometimes he answers for her." There was a flicker of amusement and curiosity on the judge's face. "All right, let's proceed with the hearing. But I want to see for myself how this works." Emma didn't react. But under the table, her fingers tapped twice on Max's paw. The dog didn't bark. He simply raised his head and stared directly at the judge. Judge Carlton blinked. For a moment, he looked shaken. And so began a custody hearing unlike anything he or anyone else in that courtroom had ever witnessed. Asterisk. The courtroom buzzed quietly as the hearing resumed. Judge Carlton's curious gaze remained fixed on Emma and Max. The judge had requested to see the silent signals in action, but so far, Emma said nothing. The lawyers resumed their arguments, Lisa's attorney passionately advocating for the girl's well-being in the foster home, while the opposing lawyer emphasized the biological family's rights. Despite the legal back and forth, the courtroom's attention kept drifting back to Emma. She sat stiffly in her chair, head down, her fingers occasionally twitching near Max's fur. The dog sat loyally by her side, alert but calm, ready to respond. The opposing attorney, Ms. Reynolds, grew impatient. Your Honor, we need to hear from the child. How can we be expected to make an informed decision when Emma won't even say a word? Judge Carlton adjusted his glasses, glancing at Emma once more. Miss Keller, do you wish to speak today? Number. Response. Not a single word. The courtroom grew uncomfortable with the silence. Whispers erupted among the observers. Lisa reached out subtly, placing her hand on Emma's shoulder. Emma flinched, but didn't pull away. Max nudged Emma's hand gently with his nose. Emma's fingers twitched again. She moved her right hand to rest lightly on Max's head, stroking him slowly. The judge watched, a flicker of realization crossing his face. Lisa's attorney spoke softly. Your Honor, Emma has suffered severe trauma. She's not comfortable speaking to strangers, especially in a courtroom. Max is her lifeline. She communicates through subtle hand signals that only Max understands. It's how she tells us when she feels safe or scared. Judge Carlton raised a skeptical eyebrow. That may be, but the court needs clear evidence. The social worker, Miss Bennett, stepped forward. Your Honor, I've observed Emma extensively over the last year. Whenever Emma feels anxious or threatened, she gives Max a particular hand, signal a light tap on his paw, or a twist of her fingers. Max responds by nudging her, arcing softly, or lying closer to her. It's a language they've built together. A way for Emma to express what she can't say aloud. Emma suddenly shifted in her seat. Without anyone noticing, she raised her left hand, curling her fingers in a small, almost invisible gesture. Max's ears perked. He stood slowly, then softly barked once. The judge's eyes widened. What was that? Lisa whispered, That's Emma's I'm scared signal. Max is letting everyone know. Judge Carlton leaned forward. Is this something the court can accept as testimony? The opposing lawyer objected loudly. Your Honor, this is highly unorthodox and could set a dangerous precedent. We need facts, not dog tricks. The judge silenced her with a wave. This court will consider all evidence, including this. The judge then called for a brief recess. In the hallway, Lisa knelt beside Emma, speaking softly. You're doing great, sweetie. Just a little more. Emma's eyes met Lisa's for the first time that day. Her lips trembled but remained sealed. Lisa turned to Judge Carlton, who stood nearby, arms crossed. She's been through things no child should endure. Max isn't just a pet. He's her voice. Carlton sighed. I admit, I'm struggling to understand. But if this dog is her only way to communicate, we owe it to her to listen. Back in the courtroom, the judge called everyone to order. We will proceed. Emma, if you wish to say anything or signal Max, you may. Emma looked down, then slid her hand beneath the table. She gave Max a subtle tap on his paw. Max rose, moving closer to her and softly barking once again. Gasps echoed from the courtroom. The judge's face softened. I want to hear what Emma is telling us. Emma finally cleared her throat. Her voice was barely a whisper, but everyone heard her say, I want to stay. A hush fell. Judge Carlton motioned for silence. Stay with whom, Emma? She looked up briefly, eyes shining. With tears, "Lisa, she makes me safe." The judge leaned back, astonished. The silent girl had spoken her truth, with her dog by her side. The courtroom was silent, hanging on Emma's small voice. "I want to stay with Lisa," she repeated, her eyes fixed on the floor. The weight of those words settled heavily in the room. Judge Carlton leaned forward, adjusting his glasses as if to steady himself. This was unlike anything he'd ever seen. A child who barely spoke, relying on a dog to communicate. Lisa gave Emma's hand a gentle squeeze. "You're doing amazing, sweetie," she whispered softly. The opposing attorney, Miss Reynolds, shifted uncomfortably. "Your Honor, I must remind the court this testimony hasn't been verified. Children can be influenced," she warned sharply. Judge Carlton raised a hand. "Enough. Let's focus on the facts. Miss Bennett, can you elaborate on Emma's background?" The social worker nodded. "Yes, Your Honor. Emma's early life was filled with neglect and trauma. Reports indicate she was often left alone, locked in closets, as punishment, and went hungry for days. She witnessed domestic violence, and her mother struggled with addiction." Murmurs rippled through the courtroom. Even Ms. Reynolds' face showed an uncharacteristic flicker of sympathy. Emma's small frame trembled slightly. Max moved closer, resting his head on her knee, offering silent comfort. Judge Carlton studied Emma closely. "Is it true that Max has helped her cope with these experiences?" Lisa responded, "Absolutely. Max is trained to recognize signs of anxiety and fear. Emma developed hand signals to communicate her feelings when she couldn't speak. Max responds instantly, grounding her in moments of panic." The judge nodded slowly. "This bond is critical." Emma suddenly raised her hand, fingers twitching. Subtly, Max sat up, ears alert. He let out a soft, controlled bark. Gasps echoed from the gallery. Judge Carlton's eyes narrowed. "What does that signal mean?" Lisa replied quietly. "It means Emma is scared, but trying to be brave." Emma's lips quivered as she fought to hold back tears. The tension in the room was palpable. "Your Honor," the judge said softly, "I'm beginning to see the language. Here isn't words, but actions." Ms. Reynolds stood abruptly. "Your Honor, this is highly irregular. We cannot base custody decisions on dog signals." Judge Carlton silenced her with a stern look. "This court must consider all evidence, including how a child communicates when words fail." He then addressed Emma directly. "Emma, do you want to tell us more? We're listening." Emma swallowed hard, then with a barely audible voice said, "I'm scared. I don't want to go back." Max immediately rested his paw on her hand, as if to steady her. Lisa's eyes welled with tears. She's endured so much. The thought of returning to her aunt's care terrifies her. Judge Carlton scribbled notes, his stern demeanor softening. He glanced at the courtroom. "We must look beyond papers and arguments. The well-being of this child depends on understanding her needs spoken or unspoken." Emma's small voice broke again. "Max helps me. Lisa helps me. I want to stay safe." The judge nodded, then spoke firmly. "We will hear all sides, but this court will prioritize Emma's safety and emotional health." The courtroom seemed to hold its breath. After a short recess, the hearing would resume, but the atmosphere had shifted. Everyone present sensed this case was no longer just about legal technicalities. It was about a girl's fragile hope and a dog's unwavering loyalty. As Emma sat quietly, Max's calm presence was a steady anchor in a turbulent world. Together, they were beginning to rewrite what it meant to be heard in a courtroom. The courtroom felt heavier now, charged with an emotion that went beyond legal arguments. Judge Carlton's stern mask had softened into something more thoughtful, even compassionate. The silence was broken only by Emma's soft breathing and Max's steady presence at her side. The courtroom staff and observers watched, waiting for what would come next. Lisa sat close to Emma, her hand resting lightly on the girl's arm. "You're safe here," she whispered. Emma's eyes flicked up briefly, meeting Lisa's gaze. Before dropping back down, "Your Honor," the social worker began, "Emma's trauma has made speaking very difficult for her. But she's been working hard with her therapist and Max to express her feelings in other ways." Judge Carlton nodded slowly. "Miss Keller, if you feel comfortable, we'd like to hear from you. You can speak to the court, or communicate however you feel safest." Emma's fingers twitched. Slowly, she raised her hand and tapped Max's paw, twice a signal she'd used countless times to indicate she was ready. Max responded by sitting up and letting out a soft, clear bark. Gasps and murmurs spread through the room. The judge raised his hand for silence. "Go ahead, Emma." A hush fell. Emma's voice was barely audible at first, shaky and unsure. "I want to stay with Lisa." The words hung in the air like fragile glass. Lisa's eyes brimmed with tears, and even Judge Carlton looked moved. The opposing lawyer's face tightened, but she said nothing. Emma took a deep breath and continued. "I don't want to go back to being scared all the time. Lisa helps me feel safe. Max helps too." The judge nodded, absorbing every word. "Thank you, Emma. That took great courage." Emma looked at Max, and then at Lisa, drawing strength from them both. The courtroom seemed to hold its breath. The reality of Emma's plea sinking in Missiao. Reynolds rose, trying to regain control of the proceedings. "Your Honor, may I remind the court that children can be influenced by their caregivers. It's possible Miss Keller's statements are coached." Emma flinched at the word coached, and Max immediately nudged her leg. She gave Max's paw a gentle squeeze, a silent plea for protection. Judge Carlton cut off the objection. "Enough. Emma, are you telling us your own feelings? Did anyone tell you what to say today?" Emma looked directly at the judge, her small face earnest and serious. "No, I say what I feel. Max helps me say it when I can't." The courtroom fell silent. The judge turned to Lisa. "Has anyone coached Emma in court?" Lisa shook her head. "Never. Emma's healing has been slow, but it's real. Max understands her in ways we can't." Judge Carlton nodded thoughtfully. "Very well. The court acknowledges the importance of Emma's bond with Max and the safety she feels with Lisa." The judge's eyes met Emma's. "Your voice is important, Emma. Thank you for sharing your truth." Emma gave a small, shy smile, and Max wagged his tail softly. It was a breakthrough, the first time Emma had openly spoken about her feelings in months. The hearing paused for a recess. In the hallway, Lisa knelt to hug Emma tightly. "You were amazing." Emma whispered, "Max helped me." Lisa smiled, tears shining in her eyes. "He always will." Judge Carlton stood nearby, quietly reviewing his notes. He was clearly moved, but still guarded. This case was far from over, but Emma's voice, fragile and new, had changed everything. Back inside, the opposing attorney prepared to resume her cross-examination, but the mood in the courtroom had shifted. Emma was no longer invisible. She had found a way to speak, even if it was through a dog's gentle bark. The courtroom settled back into its usual rhythm as the hearing resumed after recess. Judge Carlton sat rigidly, his eyes fixed on Emma and Max. The opposing lawyer, Miss Reynolds, rose with renewed determination. She paced slowly in front of the judge's bench, preparing to dismantle what she called an emotional spectacle. "Miss Keller," Miss Reynolds began, voice sharp and measured, "you say you want to stay with your foster mother, Lisa. But how do we know that's truly what you want, and not what you've been told to say?" Emma's small frame stiffened. Her fingers clenched and unclenched in Max's soft fur. Max rose instantly, placing a protective head on her knee. The courtroom held its breath. Judge Carlton raised a hand. Counselor, remember this is a child, not a witness in a criminal case. Be mindful. Ms. Reynolds nodded curtly, but pressed on. Emma, can you tell us exactly why you don't want to live with your aunt? Emma's eyes filled with tears. She looked down. Unable to speak, Max lifted his paw gently, resting it on Emma's hand. The gesture seemed to soothe her. Emma looked up, eyes locked on Max. With a shaky voice, she whispered, Because I'm scared? I was alone a lot before. I don't want that again. There was a soft murmur from the courtroom. The judge leaned forward. Emma, is it true no one told you what to say today? No, Emma said firmly, squeezing Max's paw. I'm telling you what's inside my heart. Double quotes. Ms. Reynolds tried to regain control. Are you sure you remember everything clearly? Sometimes children confuse things. Emma's lip trembled. I remember enough. I remember being cold and hungry, and locked in a closet. Gasps echoed. The opposing lawyer faltered, but pressed on. Do you think Lisa would tell you to say those things? No, Emma said quietly. Lisa helps me forget that. The judge regarded her thoughtfully. Emma, have you ever felt unsafe with Lisa? No, she whispered. Judge Carlton nodded slowly. Thank you for your honesty. The social worker stepped forward. Your Honor, I must emphasize Emma's PTSD diagnosis. Her trauma is deep. Max helps regulate her anxiety. Emma uses him to communicate feelings she can't yet say aloud. Lisa added, I have never coached Emma. She's learned to trust Max to help her speak. Judge Carlton's gaze softened as he looked at the pair girl and dog as one. Ms. Reynolds sighed, sensing her objections losing weight. The judge then addressed the court. This hearing is unusual, but we must remember the child's welfare is paramount. Sometimes the language of healing is not spoken but shown. Emma looked at Max, a flicker of courage returning. Suddenly, Emma raised her hand subtly under the table and tapped Max's paw, twice. Max barked softly, a clear and deliberate sound that echoed in the silent courtroom. Judge Carlton's eyes widened. I see your signal, Emma. Emma swallowed hard and whispered, I'm ready. The judge nodded. Very well. Let us hear what you have to say next. Emma took a shaky breath and began to tell, in her own words, the nightmares that haunted her nights, the fear she felt when separated from Lisa, and how Max was the only one who truly understood. Her voice grew stronger with every word, and for the first time, the courtroom saw the brave child behind the silence. The judge watched intently, silently promising her he would do everything in his power to protect her. Asterisk. The courtroom was quieter than it had been all morning. Judge Carlton sat behind the bench, eyes heavy with thought. He had listened carefully to every word, every silent signal, and every plea from Emma. The weight of his responsibility pressed down on him. The life of a frightened girl balanced on the edge of a decision. Emma sat next to Lisa, clutching Max's leash tightly. Max rested his head on her lap, calm and steady, a silent guardian. Judge Carlton cleared his throat. This court has heard the testimony of multiple witnesses, reviewed reports, and observed Emma's unique way of communicating through Max. While unorthodox, it is clear that this bond is essential to her well-being. Ms. Reynolds stood quickly, attempting one last objection. Your Honor, awarding custody based on a dog's signals sets a dangerous precedent. We must adhere to legal standards. The judge raised a hand to silence her. I understand your concerns, Counselor, but this case transcends standard procedure. Emma's safety and emotional health must come first. He paused, looking directly at Emma. Emma, do you feel safe with Lisa? Emma nodded vigorously, tears streaming down her cheeks. Yes, Your Honor. Max and Lisa keep me safe. I want to stay. Lisa wiped her own tears, glancing at Emma with a mixture of pride and relief. Judge Carlton shifted in his seat. "I hereby grant permanent custody of Emma Grace Keller to Lisa Morgan." The courtroom gasped. Even Ms. Reynolds lowered her head in reluctant acceptance. Emma gasped, covering her mouth with her hands. Max jumped up and gently licked her cheek. She hugged him tightly. Judge Carlton stood, stepping down from the bench. He walked slowly to where Max and Emma sat. Kneeling, he reached out and scratched behind Max's ears. "Thank you, Max. You've done more for this case than anyone else here." Max wagged his tail, tongue lolling happily. The judge looked up at the room. "Today, we witnessed something extraordinary, a silent communication that spoke louder than words. This court recognizes the profound impact an animal can have on a child's healing." Cameras flashed as reporters from local media crowded near the exit. Emma and Lisa walked out hand in paw, heads held high. Outside, a gentle breeze lifted Emma's hair as she looked down at Max. "We did it," she whispered. Lisa smiled, tears glistening. "You did it, Emma. You found your voice." Judge Carlton watched from the courtroom window, a rare smile touching his lips. The day's unusual events had changed his view of justice and compassion forever. Weeks passed since the courtroom ruling, and life slowly began to settle into a new rhythm for Emma, Lisa, and Max. The small house they shared felt warmer, filled with laughter that hadn't existed before. Emma still struggled with her past, but with Max's steady companionship and Lisa's unwavering support, she was learning to trust the world again. At school, Emma was nervous but determined. Max, now officially recognized as her service dog, accompanied her everywhere. Teachers admired the pair's bond, noting how Emma's confidence seemed to grow when Max was near. During class, Emma began whispering softly, reading books aloud to Max, a practice encouraged by her speech therapist to strengthen her voice. Lisa watched with pride. "She's coming back to life," she told a friend. "It's like she's slowly becoming the little girl we always hoped she could be." Even Judge Carlton had become part of Emma's extended circle. He sent a letter congratulating her progress and surprised Emma with a framed certificate recognizing Max's service. The judge wrote, "Max is more than a dog. He is a guardian, a friend, and a beacon of hope." Emma placed the certificate on her bedroom wall, beside drawings of Max and herself. At night, Max lay faithfully beside her bed, sensing when nightmares crept close. Emma often gave him a subtle hand signal, and Max would rest his paw on her leg, a silent reassurance. One afternoon, Lisa enrolled Emma in a community program where children with trauma could learn to communicate through animal-assisted therapy. Emma blossomed there, teaching other children how to bond with their pets and use silent signals when words felt too heavy. The neighborhood began to notice the change, too. Emma, once shy and withdrawn, now smiled more often. At the park, she laughed as Max chased squirrels, her fears slowly melting away. Despite the progress, Lisa remained vigilant. Healing isn't linear, she often reminded herself. Emma still had bad days, moments when the past threatened to overwhelm her. But with Max, Lisa, and the support of therapists, Emma found the strength to keep moving forward. Emma's story spread beyond their small town. Local news covered her journey, from silence to speech, highlighting the extraordinary role Max played. Judge Carlton was interviewed, advocating for courts to recognize emotional support animals and trauma-informed care. Emma's courage inspired other families, and she soon became a quiet symbol of hope for children trapped in silence. In quiet moments, Emma whispered to Max, "Thank you for never giving up on me." Max responded with a gentle lick and a wagging tail, their silent bond stronger than ever. Together, they were rewriting the meaning of voice, courage, and love, one silent signal at a time. Emma's story, once a quiet ripple, had grown into a powerful wave reaching far beyond her small Ohio town. What began as a silent signal between a frightened girl and her dog had become a beacon of hope, inspiring change in communities and courtrooms alike. Judge Carlton, deeply moved by the case, took on a new mission. He began speaking at conferences and legal forums about the importance of trauma-informed care and the recognition of emotional support animals in the justice system. Sometimes, he told audiences, the voices we need to hear are the quietest. They speak through silence, through gestures, and sometimes through a dog's bark. Local lawmakers took notice. Inspired by Emma's journey, they drafted legislation allowing emotional support animals to accompany children in court hearings and encouraging judges to consider trauma-informed evidence when making custody decisions. Emma's case became a blueprint for compassionate justice. Meanwhile, Emma herself grew into a confident young advocate. With Max always by her side, she visited schools and community centers, sharing her story and teaching other children how to find their own voices, whether through words or silent signals. The therapy program that helped her communicate blossomed into a community initiative, pairing children who had experienced trauma with trained support animals. Emma was its youngest ambassador, her courage lighting the way for others at home. The bond between Emma, Lisa, and Max deepened every day. Max, once just a dog, was now family. A silent hero whose gentle nudges had rewritten the course of a young girl's life. One summer afternoon, Emma stood at a local event, holding Max's leash tightly. She spoke to a crowd of families, children, and officials, her voice steady and clear. Sometimes words are hard, she said, but that doesn't mean we're silent. We find other ways to be heard. Max helped me find my voice when I couldn't speak. And with love and trust, we can all be heard. Tears filled the eyes of many in the audience. Emma smiled, looking down at Max, who wagged his tail proudly. The judge who once doubted sat in the front row, his eyes shining with pride. Emma's journey from a frightened, silent child to a brave young woman who changed a community was a testament to the power of empathy, courage, and the unspoken bonds that heal. Her silent signals, once dismissed, had become a language of hope, reminding everyone that sometimes the loudest voices are those whispered softly or barked quietly by a faithful friend. And so, Emma and Max continued forward, side by side, a living proof that trust and love can break through even the deepest silence.